So I'm John Palmer from the Hopkinton Historical Society. This is the Hidden Treasures Show, and we're going to talk today about part 2 of the story that we were dealing with a month ago. And in case you didn't catch that, this was a story about Magunko Hill, the location, and about Sir Harry Franklin, who lived and built his summer home on Magunko Hill and had a love affair with a Lady Agnes. This continues on. The next part of the story I call the miracle. And this is probably the most interesting part of the whole story. But anyways, in 1754, Sir Harry had to go to England to attend a family legal matter. And Agnes accompanied him on this voyage. They sailed, of course. While Agnes was there, she experienced the same coldness, class coldness that existed in Boston. After the legal affairs were concluded, they moved from England and they settled in Lisbon, head of the Kingdom of Portugal. In the 1700s, Lisbon was a booming, wealthy, culturally advanced, and most desirable place to live. They leased a grand home there and resumed normal courtly lifestyle. Lisbon society accepted Agnes for the beautiful and refined woman that she was, and they were not at all troubled by her humble roots or their lack their marital status, which was unwed. All was well with Harry and Agnes in 1755, or so they thought all was well. Anyways, Portugal is a Roman Catholic country, and one of the greatest feast days of the Catholic Church is All Saints' Day, which is celebrated annually, and it is today. November 1 is the All Saints' Day. Anyways, November 1, 1755 was like no other All Saints' Day, or for that matter, like no other day ever in Lisbon. That day dawned in sunlight, the wind was calm, the city was alive with throngs of faithful on their way to the Holy Day Masses. Suddenly, at 10 o'clock in the morning, a thunderous sound was heard. The sky turned black, shock waves were felt, the earth shook for 20 minutes, buildings everywhere began to collapse, and the waters of the great Taurus River were upheaved. Lisbon on All Saints' Day, 1755, suffered one of the most destructive earthquakes in all of European history, with estimated deaths of 60,000 people and with 12,000 buildings destroyed. At the time of the quake, Sir Harry and a court lady companion were on their way to witness a Holy Day High Mass when a nearby building belonging to a prominent local family collapsed, and they were instantly buried in its debris. The horses that drew their chaise were killed. The lady companion died a torturous death, but somehow Franklin remained alive under the rubble. Agnes immediately began to search for Sir Harry and faintly heard him crying out for salvation. She quickly mustered the aid of nearby persons, and they amazingly extracted him from the ruins, mostly unharmed. Sir Harry was so grateful to have survived that he resolved to amend his past sinful ways and to immediately wed Agnes, and this he did. They were soon married by a Catholic priest in Lisbon, and they were later remarried by an Anglican priest on a ship from Portugal to England. As soon as the travel permitted, Sir Harry and Lady Franklin sailed to England and returned to the Franklin family homestead in Thirlby. Thirlby is a community in Yorkshire. This time, the entire Franklin family celebrated Agnes as a heroine. Sir Harry retained the possession of his bloody dress coat and the bent sword and scabbard that he was wearing at the time of the earthquake. These articles traveled with him to England and eventually traveled with him to Hopkinton, where they were permanently stored at the Franklin House. In the summer of 1756, Sir Harry and Lady Agnes returned to Hopkinton and brought along with them the young Henry Cromwell. Young Henry was born in 1741. Sir Harry claims to be the boy's father, but his mother's identity is not known. Agnes denies that she's the mother. In July 1757, the King of England appointed Sir Harry as his Consul General to the Kingdom of Portugal. This appointment necessitated that he place the Hopkinton estate in the care of a trusted administrator, Jacques Joseph Velaz de Rohan, for the duration of his service in Lisbon. Sir Harry and Lady Franklin returned to Hopkinton in 1763, but remained here for only a short time, as it had become clear that Bath, England, known for its healing waters, would be a better location for their permanent home. Harry's health was now in a state of decline. Sir Charles Henry Franklin, Baronet, died July 11, 1768, at the age of 51, and is buried in the church cemetery at Weston, a beautiful village near Bath. Lady Franklin had a memorial to her husband placed on an interior wall of the Weston Church. It reads, "To the memory of Sir Charles Henry Franklin of Thirlby, in the county of York, Baronet, Consul General for many years at Lisbon, from whence he came in hopes of recovery from a bad state of health to Bath, where after a tedious and painful illness, which he sustained with patience and resignation, becoming a Christian, he died 11 January 1768 in the 52nd year of his life, without issue, and at his own desire lies buried in this church. This monument is erected by his affectionate wife, widow Agnes Lady Franklin." Soon after the death of her husband, Lady Agnes Franklin returned to Hopkinton and remained here for 7 years until 1775, when the Revolutionary War commenced. Because of her close ties to the British in the Boston area, Agnes thought it best that she cede her Massachusetts residency in favor of living with the Franklin family in England. She died in Chichester, England on April 23, 1783, at the age of 57, and is buried at St. Pancras Church in Chichester. Lady Agnes did not give birth to any children. Franklin Manor in Hopkinton, however, continued to be owned and occupied by Henry Cromwell and relatives of Lady Agnes until the property was sold by Cromwell in 1793. Dr. Timothy Shepherd of Sherborne was the buyer. He paid a price of 950 English pounds for that property. The Franklin estate remained in the possession of Dr. Shepherd or his wife until 1857, although its acreage during their ownership had been greatly reduced. Elias Nason was the next and last owner of the original Franklin Manor. Within a year of his purchase, all the buildings on the estate were completely destroyed by fire. The bloody coat and other tangible memories of the Lisbon earthquake, however, were saved. But they unfortunately were later lost in another fire that occurred in 1902. In the prologue to the Ballad of Agnes, this is what Oliver Wendell Holmes had to say about the Franklin Manor. It is to be regretted that the Franklin Mansion no longer exists. It was accidentally burned on the 23rd of January, 1858, a year or two after the first sketch of this ballad was written. A visit to it was like stepping out of the century into the years before the Revolution. A new house, similar in plan and arrangements to the old one, has been built upon its site, and the terraces, the clump of boxwood, the lilacs doubtless remain to bear witness to the truth of this story. Now you go on to about the help and how that terrace got constructed. Sir Charles Henry Franklin owned about a dozen African slaves that lived in Hopkinton and served on the plantation. They were held in a loose type of bondage until 1770, when all slavery in Massachusetts was effectively eliminated. We know the names and backgrounds for most of Sir Charles' servants from the extensive writing of researchers and authors who, like myself, have a fascination in the love affair between Lady Agnes and Sir Harry. Slaves Robert and Dinah were purchased by Sir Harry directly off of a slave ship from Guinea. They were ink black and both had brand marks on their bodies. Robert was a favorite of Harry and was with him in Lisbon. He lived a long life and died in Hopkinton. Dinah married another slave, Primus Titus. She gave birth to at least 6 children. All her children were mulattoes, that is, they all had white fathers. One child was Julia Titus, a wonderful cook who was literate and lived on the Franklin estate until the 1860s. Julia's father was not Primus, but rather was the estate's white coachman, James Butler. Richard Potter was another child of Dinah's. His father was George Stimpson. Richard Potter attended school in Hopkinton and went on to become a very famous and successful circus entertainer. Sir Harry purchased Bacchus and Hannah at a slave auction in Boston in 1754 for £600. Both Bacchus and Hannah accompanied the Franklins to Lisbon. My motivation for preparing this talk is to share a most fascinating history of the locale where my wife and I now proudly reside. The site in which our condo home is located was once owned by Sir Charles Henry Franklin, Baronet. For a more romantic portrayal of the love affair between Lady Agnes and Sir Harry, I recommend the poem Agnes by Oliver Wendell Holmes. The Hopkinton Historical Society has an extensive collection of material about Sir Harry and Lady Agnes. Please visit us if you would like to learn more about them. I hope you have enjoyed this piece of local history as much as I do. Thank you very much for watching.